Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Sunday night webinar. Tonight, we're going to learn about motivating others with Brad. As I always say to everybody, this recording will be on YouTube, but the Q&A at the end of the meeting will not be on YouTube. So if you wonder why we say Q&A and the recording stops, that will be why. Without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Brad Revell.
Thank you, John. Good evening, everybody. How are we all today? Are we motivated? I guess that's the important question. All right, so we're getting some nods and smiles. So I guess that's a good start. Well, it's a pleasure to present. It's been a while since I've presented one of these webinars, and I think this is actually a really important topic to talk about tonight, and for many different reasons. I think we have many different Toastmasters doing various different roles that are various different journeys, and the motivating aspects are really key. Some people are quite self-motivated, and as I am, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we go through. And then there are other people that are not self-motivated. And I think what's really interesting within the Toastmasters world is we go on this journey and we get really motivated, like it's a new thing, it's a shiny new object. And then after 6, 12, 18 months, the motivation wanes away. And how do we continue to keep people motivated? How do we get them to continue moving forward and chipping away? And as you'll see in my introduction, hopefully kind of alludes to my my self-motivation. So I'm just about hitting the 20-year mark of a Toastmaster, and I've been a Toastmaster all around the world. Just give you a bit of a background. So I started off in Australia at the club 6666, in fact, and it was the Boeing Toastmasters Club. And I was there for a number of years, and then I went to the US, and then I've ended up in the UK. And part of that has been doing a number of different club roles. It's been part of contests. It's been a district leader for many years. I've had every different flavor of Toastmasters. And I'll tell you a quick story to begin with, because we all love stories at the moment. So I was just in Dubai, gosh, for the last 12 days. I got back about 3 days ago. And I remember 20 years ago, Gavin Blakey, and you probably don't know who Gavin Blakey is, but he's a former international president of Toastmasters organization. I think it was 2002, 2003, the international president. Well, he in fact lives in my hometown of Brisbane, Australia. And by just happen chance that he turned up to one of the clubs in London, and I got to meet him, and I met his wife, and we're good friends now. Anyway, he did a speech when I first joined my first year about going to Dubai and visiting the Burj Al Arab, and it's known as the only 7-star hotel in the world. Like, it's very, very fancy, and I could bore you the entire evening because I went to the Burj twice while I was in Dubai. Anyway, I was mentioned to him nearly 20 years later. I said, Gavin, I'm going to Dubai, and I remember your story about how you visited the Burj Al Arab. And at the time, there's a bridge to get to the hotel, and you had to pay $100 if you weren't staying at the hotel. But at the time, he was traveling as the international president, so going to various different regions and districts to visit the clubs, as you do as international president. Anyway, he comes back to me and says, oh, great, you're going to Dubai. You should really look up this guy, Mohammed. And I went, okay, cool. I'll put you in contact so you connect. He was the guy that got me around everywhere in Dubai. He used to work for the police and just knows everybody. I went, okay, cool. So anyway, Mohammed, he connects me to Mohammed, and we start chatting away. And as you do, you want to get to know who Mohammed is. And so I kind of looked him up on LinkedIn, and you wouldn't believe it, he's an ex-international president as well. So I ended up having dinner with Mohammed, who gave me all the lowdown of Dubai and what's going on. And I guess my whole point of this story is these guys are so motivated Toastmasters. Gavin is always willing to help out. He's always checking in to see how I am. Mohammed was the same as well. He's like, you know, you got to go here, you got to do this. You got to continue pushing and learning and growing. And I think that's what motivation is all about. If you have it intrinsically, that's great. But I think a lot of us in the Toastmasters world need to also think about the extrinsic kind of motivation. How do you motivate others? How do you get them rallying and excited? Because like I said, day one, it's like a new shiny object. But day 2, day 3, that motivation wanes. So we need to learn to understand people, I think, a little bit deeper than we do at the surface, and see how we can, and I don't mean manipulating, but using that knowledge and understanding to help them move forward. And I think that's what we can do as Toastmasters, as well as leaders in particular. So I'm going to jump straight into this. I saw this quote and I thought it was really good. a good introduction to what we do. Like people come in, they're really excited. I want to be a better speaker. I want to be a better leader. And they come and join and they make it so fun. And usually that 1 year mark, and I'll show you a bit of a timeline later, the motivation wanes. So you've come this far, but you need to continue to push. I feel like with communication and leadership, and I hope you all agree that it's like as Stephen Covey says, continuing to sharpen the saw. It's like a muscle you build. You need to continue exercising it. And that's why I've continued to do roles. That's why I've done various different things, from contests to workshops to mentoring to coaching, because I need to continue chipping away at it. I feel like I've made it to a certain level, but I have so much more to do and to achieve. So I think it's a really nice saying just to anchor us for this entire presentation. You just didn't come this far. You've got to continue motivating. And if you've heard me speak before, one of my biggest things about Toastmasters is don't do Toastmasters just for Toastmasters' sake. Do it because it allows you to grow and grow into various different other aspects in your life, whether it's your career, whether it's your family, it's your friends. I do this because it's something that I'm very passionate about, but I leverage this in my day-to-day job. I'm in fact in a hotel room. I'll give you a little quick tour. There's my hotel room for the week, and I'm doing 2 presentations, and I'm going to have to rally a team of 80 sales staff tomorrow morning, and I'm going to have to do it on Wednesday as well. We've got 2 different sessions, and again, it's about motivating them, getting to think a little bit differently, and I use all of my Toastmaster skills to do that. So let's get going. One of the things that was really interesting when I started with Toastmasters is the whole competent Toastmasters, and I've done it in black and white for a reason, because it's very one-dimensional. Yes, you can become a better communicator. You get to do public speeches, to get feedback from your peers, and you can do many other different roles. So that's kind of the left dimension of it. But there's the other dimension as well, leadership. And I think it's something that people don't see as often. Like, what can you do? And I've got to up the bottom right, I've copied that from something else. But anyway, leadership was about practicing and motivating others and giving them feedback, driving club strategies, many, many different things in the realm of a leader, right? So there's a number of different things you can do within Toastmasters, but I think that's the wrong approach. We need to look at the individual a little bit more than something generic. So if you look at someone like Peter Drucker, I love his quote. Does everybody know who Peter Drucker is? Yes, I get nods. Peter Drucker, I always like to say Peter Drucker is the guy that if you looked up the term management in the dictionary, a picture of Peter Drucker would come up. He is a management guru. I read a page from the Daily Drucker every day, and he has some really profound things that he says. But we talk about organizations and people in that self, they're not capable of perpetuating themselves, right? So they need to continue to think about tomorrow, renewing their capital, renewing what they do, upgrade their resources. So I think you can look at this in an organizational perspective, but you also need to look at it at an individual perspective. And there's a really great way of actually doing that. So I'm going to go straight into that today. So core human needs. So I've done a lot of different things around the world and in terms of programs and seminars and courses. And one of the ones that has really resonated for me is something that Tony Robbins talks about in a lot of his programs. He talks about the 6 core human needs. So they're listed on the left-hand side. So there's 4 core human needs, the physical, the real core needs, and then there's like psychological needs down the bottom. So let me go through them. I'm going to go a little bit of an exercise later on just to see where you think you can apply these skills within the world of Toastmasters. So if I was to look at these needs, we'll start off with certainty. People join Toastmasters to be certain that they can get up in front of people and do a presentation and not screw it up or get their message across, or many other different things. So they need to have that need of safety, that they're comfortable, they can be predictable, they control, they know what they're going to be able to do. And I think all of us have remembered our icebreaker, how nervous it was, because we wanted to have certainty that we can get that across and make sure people understand what we have to say. But what ends up happening is most Toastmasters will come in for that particular need. They want to be certain, but then it starts to change. They maybe want to get into some more uncertainty, where they want to challenge themselves, learn to do something a little bit differently. Hence why tabletop is really powerful. Hence why doing certain roles in a club meeting are really powerful. Contests, workshops, and so on and so forth. The uncertainty example that Tony Robbins likes to use is extreme sports. People doing really, really crazy things. They want that uncertainty. They thrive on that uncertainty. The third one is quite interesting as well, which is significance. And significance is one that's not necessarily a strong one for me, but I see it really prevalent in the Toastmasters world. And it's why we have awards. It's why we have suffixes at the end of our names. So people they want to get praise. They want to have recognition for what they do in the Toastmasters world. Now, I'm not saying significance is a bad thing. I think it is really important for certain people, but you need to understand if it's really important. If you see people that join Toastmasters to want to be a better public speaker, but then within a few weeks, they want to become a distinguished Toastmaster, that is a really classic case of significance. You see the paradigm shift change quite somewhat. Connection and love. One of my favorite connection love needs was a guy that said, "Why do you go to Toastmasters?" And he said, "Because at the end of the Toastmasters meeting, we get to go up and chat." I thought that was another really interesting thing where people come into Toastmasters, not necessarily because they want to become a better public speaker, but because they love the social element. They love conversing with people and learning and talking, getting feedback potentially, that connection and love. And I think we've lost a lot of that because we've had to be virtual. We've had no other choice. But hopefully as we come back with this hybrid approach and physical meeting, we'll be able to bring that connection and love back. I think, why there's been a lot of mental health issues, because that has lacked a lot in what we've been doing. And the last two are a little bit different when it comes to needs. So there's personal growth and contribution. So I think everybody has an element of personal growth in what they're doing within Toastmasters. They want to continue to chip away and sharpen that saw, as I mentioned before, when it comes to Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That's the 7th habit. But also contribution, how you give back. And I think one of the things that I've certainly learned as I've gone throughout my career is that I'm more focused on contribution and personal growth than I ever have been before. For me, what's really fascinating is the more I contribute, the more I learn, which is the irony that a lot of people don't actually understand to begin with. So the point of all of this is, like, if you look at the map of the world, if you can actually start to really understand the members that are coming in, the visitors that are turning up to your club, and understanding what bucket they are in, not just today, but also tomorrow, because it's going to change. Guaranteed it's going to change. What happens when you become a competent communicator, or you get to your first path, and I should use the new program, you get your first path or your second path in, you have a lot more certainty than you have before. So maybe you need to look at a little bit of uncertainty. What about people that are really driven by significance? That's more important for them to get their ribbon. I don't mean this as a good or a bad thing, but the majority of ribbons I get right at the end of the meeting, I go back to the president and say, "Hey, here's that ribbon back. Give it to someone that really, really wants it." I appreciate the gesture, but for me, that's not what my need is. My need's a little bit different. So I give the ribbon back, and I know it's going to go to someone that actually really, really wants it. What about that connection? Like, if people are really there for connection, how can you start to draw that out in a club meeting setting, whether it's with socials, with other activities inside or outside of the club? And last but not least, with personal growth, making sure that we're chipping away at every single member that's part of the club. And obviously with contribution, that's a big one. And I think contribution is an interesting one. Ruth and I were talking about that just before starting the actual webinar. Both of us have contributed. John is on these webinars every week contributing. We all contribute. And sometimes there's a very delicate balance based off what's going on in our normal lives, what's going on in our Toastmasters lives. So it's always a challenging balance to come to do this sort of thing. But I think there's a lot of reward in doing that too. And I think we lose the destination. I know we're in the journey. We start to see that lack of destination when we're doing these contributing leadership roles, such as in the district and within our club. But you are learning, you're getting that personal growth, and that growth, but I think we forget a little bit about it. So anyway, that's a little bit of a nice anchoring foundation around when you're motivating people. Use this as a map of understanding what are the needs, where's the focus areas for your various members. Be a nice way just to kind of tick off, where do you think your member sits within these particular areas? Again, when they start, certainty, yes. When they're into it for a while, maybe uncertainty. Definitely significance plays a lot into these roles. Love connection as well. And the last two, none of us really come to Toastmasters without trying to grow, right? But then contributing changes things as we go. All right. The other thing is, and I wanted to put this, frame this conversation as well, is the journey versus the destination. And I brought this up before. People change instantly when they come into the Toastmasters world. You come in really kind of scared and anticipatory in terms of what's about to happen. You don't know what's going on and whether you get volunteered, do I have to talk? And you have this journey that you want to go on. It's to do maybe a best man speech, or it's to be comfortable to present to or talk to your boss, or to be able to be spontaneous when you're get asked a question within a meeting. All these different things that you're trying to get are really quite important. So focusing on that journey and a destination, and I'm a big one of a journey more than the destination. But keep in mind, a lot of people do think about destinations a little bit about them versus the journey. So I think that's quite important. So that's definitely important. So I'm going to just pause for there. I saw a little question here, there, or some questions in there. Others to motivate themselves. Let's get that to that one at the end. We'll maybe do that a bit of discussion. That was how to motivate others, how to get them to motivate themselves. That's an actually good one. I think it's sometimes putting a mirror in front of them and actually saying, learning where they are in terms of their journey, what is their needs, and actually putting that in front of them like a moment of truth, but more individually focused on the actual member themselves. I'm just looking at some of the other comments so we keep them relevant. I agree, yes. Adrian's point on capabilities that are significant for why do we chase a DTM. And that's more of a destination, isn't it? When you've done all the different steps in the journey and you get to the destination, what's next? So you got to think about that fulfillment versus achievement kind of paradigm shift as well. So the journey is, I want to be the best leader or communicator I can be, right? That's the journey we really want to be on versus the destination, whereas I just want to be a DTM. Just as a side note, it took me 19 years to get to my DTM. It's not something that's been a focus area for me, but again, that's different to other people as well. I've been always wanting to chip away at being a better communicator and a better leader, but that's my focus. And I think sometimes we will need to shift people and their focus back to the left-hand side. All right, so the membership danger zone. I did this slide for a different webinar, but I think this is really relevant. So let's work through it from left to right. So we've got a member visiting and a member joining, right? So they come in, they're really excited, they're really motivated, they've got all the energy that we could possibly want. And sometimes we lose, as a committee and as a club set of members, and kind of lose that motivation based off how they're orientated into the club. So it's really important that when we get our new visitors converted to members, we hit the ground running for them. We keep them excited. We get them into roles. We get them contributing straight away, so you can maintain that motivation all the way through. I've just joined a new club, and I'm not going to mention the club on this webinar, but just interesting to see the differences on how you're kind of motivated through the journey of being orientated into that particular club. So I've got a mentor, even though I've been a Toastmaster for such a long time, I've been allocated a mentor, which is great. And this person's really helping me out, getting me involved in the various different meeting roles, which is fantastic. And that's what we need to be able to do, keep people motivated, because sometimes they don't have that intrinsic motivation as well. We orientate them, we go through the assessment, we do the icebreaker, and we go through our first journey to a point where we get to, let's say, our pathway level completion. So it might be the first level, maybe not even a path, but that's where the danger zone starts to become apparent. And what has become apparent? Because people feel like when they've hit their first level, or they feel like they've hit the first part of the journey, that that's all they need to do. Or they may have a goal that comes up where they've actually accomplish what they need to do. And I mentioned one before, like doing a best man speech or presenting in front of a group. You've got some sort of key presentation. When they've done that, they've hit that destination and they've not been reframed that journey. Don't understand that it's a muscle that you need to continue building. So we need to, again, put in front of our members. And I think it's the role of the presidents, it's the role of the Toastmaster, reinforce not just the what, but the why. It's what Simon Sinek always talks about. People don't buy what you do, by what do it. So why am I continuing to go to Toastmasters? Because it means that I'm always going to be sharp. I'm always going to be confident. I'm always going to be able to do what I need to do in front of an audience and not freak the hell out, as an example. So that the danger zone is really key to make sure that we understand where the member is on their journey. It's sometimes hard at the granular level. Sometimes we may be able to do it at aggregate, but having things in place, and maybe mentors, maybe having check-ins, maybe having those kind of meetings, those moment of truth meetings, to make sure we understand where our members are at. Like when you hit a path, it's like, congratulations, Ruth, you've hit your path. What's next? I can give you some feedback. I can see where you've come. Maybe try this as a next step. This is a journey, not a destination. Just really reinforcing. I'm picking on Ruth because I know Ruth. But yeah, just hitting on that type of message with Ruth to make sure that she then reframes in her mind, like, oh, wow, yeah, that's right. This is a journey. This is really cool. I've just begun the journey. Okay. So definitely need to reframe that. You want to be careful because we always see that drop off at renewal time. So if we think that this whole membership journey is 1 year, depends on the club and how active you are, this can really change the game if you can continue to keep your members motivated all the way from pathway level completion all the way through to renewal. And you've got to continue to do that. Otherwise, if people are not motivated, if they see this, and this is the other aspect, if they see this as just about Toastmasters and not about what they can do outside of the world of Toastmasters, then again, that's another big red flag, in my opinion, because they just can't see the transferable skill set that they can take out into the real world. And I've been able to do that. I've found it really useful for me, but not everybody does that. All right, so a lot of me talking, and John, you did say you're not going to mute everybody, so I feel like this, with such a small audience that we, I haven't looked at the chat, but a small audience, I'd love to get some feedback from everybody here. So feel free to unmute and just throw out some ideas. So if we were to think about our members' needs, if it's certainty, variety, love, connection, significance, growth, contribution, what would be some ideas? What would be the Toastmasters arsenal that we would throw at our members? I'm using this very loosely. I'm trying to use a lot of metaphor here.
John, you probably touched on this already, but I think one of the conversations that my club tries to have with new members, or even people who are looking at joining, is not just what you're looking, why are you coming into Toastmasters? How does it line up with other things you do in your life? Because if the work you're doing in Toastmasters, whether it's doing speeches, doing roles, taking on opportunity to run events and so on, is helping other areas of your life, whether it's professionally, it could be something professionally, it could be dealing with a social issue or anything like that, you're more likely to want to participate, to want to engage in the journey, because it's not just a ribbon, it's not just a certificate, it actually is doing real value to your life. And that's a conversation that you will probably be having throughout your time at Toastmasters in every level that you engage.
Yep. No, I 100% agree with that. 100% agree with that. Again, it's back to that journey versus destination. Is reframing things from an achievement frame to a fulfillment frame. Yet you are learning and growing as an individual, and you are helping others as part of that journey. That's a really cool motivation as well. So
what I would say, Brad, leave this very quickly, is that a red flag for me, if I was looking at a club, is if that conversation with the membership isn't taking place, because that club's going to, not only you're not providing the value to your members that they should get, and that club is going to struggle.
Yeah, 100%. And without going too much off topic, and I know Rupa, who's our program quality director this year, she and I always smile when we use this term, but it's called club hygiene. Adrian, it's club hygiene is essentially doing all the right things in a club, on a regular basis, to make sure if you have, you're putting your meals in on time, you're chatting to your members, you're getting to understand their needs, you've got your roles out in time, you're getting your feedback, all of these things are just the hygiene of a club. And if you do all these things right, really amazing things start to happen. But when those things start to slip through the cracks, you're not reconnecting with your members. I've joined clubs, and I tell you, I've joined clubs and I've not even got an introduction or an orientation. I'm like, we'll see you at the meeting. I mean, that's a red flag to your point. So you can continue to hit the ground running and continue to chip away at what are those needs for your members. Again, in individual level and in aggregate, make sure it's much more of a fulfillment conversation versus an achievement conversation. So with that said, let's go back to this is kind of like my version of a quiz. What would be some Toastmasters arsenal that we would use certainty? Just feel free to shout it out. What would be some ideas?
Mentoring.
Yeah. Okay, come on. You guys haven't even given me the obvious one. If you wanted to give a member certainty in how they can be a better public speaker and leader, what would you get them to do? What would be some of the Toastmasters arsenal, the things that we can do within a Toastmasters world?
Give them a role.
Exactly. Give them a role. What else?
Let them give them a speech as quickly as they could.
Great. Yep. Speech. And what do we do after a speech?
Feedback.
Exactly. Feedback. All right. Perfect. Okay. That kind of covers off certainty. What about variety? What's some variety ideas?
Give them a different role.
Different role. Yep. Easy. You knocked the easy one out, John. I love it.
Yeah.
Contest.
Did you say Toastmaster? Did you, Ruth?
Contest, like
Contest?
compete.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
Funny you say contest, because I was just at a judging a contest where I was trying to drum up people for my area contest to take on roles, and somebody, a prospective member says, "Oh, I want to be part of that contest." So he's now having a conversation about joining.
Well, there you go.
That's good.
Exactly. That could be a significant thing, though. Let's get to that in just a second. Anything else in variety?
The pathway you choose as well, because the pathways we have are actually giving you a much wider range of things. So you could actually persuade somebody, not persuade, but one of the things somebody could do is take on a pathway that has them doing things they wouldn't normally do.
Okay. Yeah, agree. What about love connection? I gave an idea before. What about some of the others that have been that are on the call that may be muted, not said anything yet? What about love connection? What would be some love connection ideas?
Meeting for coffee.
Meeting for coffee, yeah. Adrian said one before that you could also use for love connection. Starts with M.
Mentor.
Mentoring, absolutely. All right. Significance. What's the obvious ones there?
Best speaker, best evaluator.
Certificates, ribbons, recognition. And it is really important for certain people. So I don't want to diminish significance at all. It may not be relevant for you. It isn't for me, but it is really important for other people. And that's a big disconnect that I've learned throughout my time in Toastmasters. Because it hasn't been important to me, I haven't realized it's important to other people. And that's something that I've had to grow in as an individual. So keep that in mind. What about growth? Any others that haven't come up with ideas yet? We've said a lot of them already. Growth could be completing a path. Growth could be being a mentor or a sponsor or a club coach, as an example, potentially. Yeah, and it's similar with contribution. So let's open up the kind of ideas that I had here, so you can kind of see them all. So yeah, so certainty is practicing feedback. When you practice and you get that feedback, you're getting more certain. That's why we originally joined Toastmasters. And the problem is that when we get certain, that's when things start to change. So we want to bring the variety, new paths, meeting roles, variety, that's for sure. It's challenging in a different way, maybe even changing the whole meeting up. I know that there's many different meeting themes, doing reverse meetings and many other different ideas you can bring to bear to pull that variety theme into what you do in your meetings. Love connection, social events, conferences as an example. Mentoring I didn't add in there, but that's absolutely key as well. Significance, recognition certificates, even the suffix at the end of your name. Many people find that important, and that's fine. And then
or even throwing somebody an awkward challenge because you think you're up to it. Like there was one year we had a veteran Toastmaster, David Longley, and I was short a speech. So I actually took an article from the Evening Standard that was talking about the London riots at the time. And I said to him, listen, David, I'm giving you this. You're going to be doing a 5 to 7 minute speech on this article. Your preparation starts now.
Yeah.
And I said to him, David, this is something, I'm confident that you could do this. I wouldn't give this to anybody else. So he lifted his eyebrows. He took on the challenge and did it well. But throwing that out curveball at somebody as well does, I know you can handle this. Does give a buzz.
100%. We, my old club, Phoenix Speakers, used to have the Phoenix Challenge. If we didn't have enough speakers for the evening, we would pull out a topic and that person would write the speech while the other speeches are going and then present it as a club speech. So again, may not be everybody's cup of tea. However, in the interest of variety and in the interest of growing, that's a definite way of doing that. So just to wrap up,
right? On the point of growth, what that kind of thing does, if you do it every so often, people who are now coming through it shows that that's what's possible.
Right.
That somebody could actually, on half an hour's notice, do a really good 5 to 7 minutes. That's what's possible. That could be me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point, and some people probably would have covered off a little bit later. But when people hit to a certain milestone, it's great for them to reflect and actually talk about their journeys. So other people can learn, other members can understand what were the steps and what did they get out of it. And I think, that's what I'm trying to do and share as part of my journey as well, because everybody's journey is different. What is it I've got out of it? Why am I still here? Why am I doing it, week after week, month after month, year after year? Because there's still things that I can get out of it. I know that as a public speaker, that I've got still things I need to learn and achieve and grow and understand to really hit that panacea, which I don't think I'll ever hit, but that's a cool part because I'll be able to continue doing this. So it's very important. Just in the interest of time, let's keep going. So contribution, club and district leadership is a big one. When it comes to club contribution, I get a lot of questions. I think Rupa mentioned this to me as well. How do you get people motivated to want to do club leadership? They just feel it's a lot of work. And I think the important thing is to reframe it. Again, the journey, not the destination. They're going to be learning a lot of skills as part of being a club leader. They're going to learn a lot of skills as being a district leader. Yes, of course, there's a lot of work, but that's what happens when you exercise. You start to build a skill set. You start to build those muscles, as I mentioned before. So you need to really reframe it. Again, not just about you getting to the end of it, but you are learning as you go through that journey, and it's applicable outside of the work environment. Quick story, so I can put this into context. So I've been an area director, I've been a division director, and I've also been a club finance manager for the district. One of the reasons I did a club finance manager, it was because it allowed me to get some more financial experience and exposure that I couldn't get in my resume in my day job, because I work in the world of technology. And it's allowed me to get myself as a trustee on a charity, because I have that financial background, which I wouldn't have got any other way. So you got to reframe these things when you start to understand what people's needs are as they go through their journey in Toastmasters. So let's keep going. So what I wanted to do is just kind of lay out what a journey could look like for you as you're starting to work with your various different members. So it's pretty easy for the first year, right? So we're joining in the beginning. We're a green bean. I'm going to use that term. So we don't know what we don't know. We're learning. We're kind of looking at others and modeling based off what we see with their club leadership. But then you get to a 0.5, let's say half of a year, and you know enough to be dangerous. You kind of know the meeting structure. You know you got to do a speech. You got your party. You got your journey. You know what you're going to have to do and chip away at it. But then you get to a point of that first year, progress has been made. I've got that feedback and contribution. And as I pointed out earlier, that's that kind of danger zone. So what do we look at? What are some of the avenues that we can do? And these don't have to be sequential. They can be in parallel. And these are not just absolute ideas. There's absolutely other ideas above and beyond what I've listed here. But here's some ideas. Committee, competition. That kind of takes the two different areas, the communication aspect and the leadership aspect. What can your members look to do to continue really driving those leadership skills in the committee, or potentially compete? And I know the likes of the Ruths, Helena's are looking for also people in the world of, I said Ruth, I meant Rupa, sorry Ruth, looking for people for club coaches, club mentors, sponsors, and so on and so forth. So there's many different ideas in that year 2 and year 3. So you don't have to be directly leadership focused in the club. You can look at other clubs and helping others continue to grow. And again, it's also be district leadership in that year 4 potentially. It doesn't have to be year 4, can be back as further. Don't feel and look at this as a sequential steps to this goal, right? So leadership in the district can be many different roles, and I've played many of them. Again, Ruth, Adrian, you guys have been district leaders as well, and probably many others. Barbara's on the call as well. There's many different roles that you can play in achieving and continuing to chip away at being a Toastmaster. And then what's next? Rinse and repeat. You can start from the beginning. I'm starting a new path at the moment, and it's good to go through that journey again. What other roles that I haven't done at the club that I may be able to take on? Again, other roles within the district. So there's plenty of opportunities here. I'm just laying out what I thought would be some great ideas, but make sure that you do that as well. So strengthening, retaining and strengthening memberships. So motivating members, look at a few different ideas down the bottom here. So again, understanding the needs is definitely the foundation. That's what we've spent a lot of time focusing on here. So understand your needs in the individual and the aggregate. Look at your meeting structure and variety and so this is more at the aggregates. Where can you start to seek different ideas and input? There's plenty of clubs to do very many different things in the way they structure their meetings. That gives you variety. It means people continue to learn. They're surprised. It means they have to work and get challenged, which means that they're growing as a result. That's really important. Certain clubs can do mentoring in buddies. Some clubs do not. But I think having buddies as an informal kind of relationship in a club hits on that membership connection and love need that I mentioned before. Helps with the variety. It helps you keep your finger on the pulse for all of your members. Keeps them understanding what's going on in each other's worlds. So if you're not hitting in those certain needs that they have, or you need to reframe or you need to refocus. So that's really important. So if you don't have mentoring, I like the buddies concept because it's a little bit more informal and people don't get so caught up with, oh, I'm going to be a member, that's going to be a lot of work. Buddies seem a little bit easier, right? But still achieves pretty much the same result. And the last two areas, club success plan. Looking at the club again in aggregate, what's your makeup of members? What are they looking to try and achieve? Where can we shape the club into the future based off those needs? So again, look at that strategy and see where you kind of execute a little bit differently to motivate your members, really understand what's going on. And last but not least, do that inside look, like not an outside in, but that inside out, like moments of truth. Look at your club. What are they doing well? What are they not doing well? And you step around those 5 major areas to understand where we can focus into the future. All the way from visitors, orientation, induction, all the way to growing your members and making sure the club's executing with that hygiene that I mentioned before. Last little story, and this is to do with club leadership and you trying to motivate people. It's one of my favorite stories. And if you've heard this before, I apologize, but it's a great book by a guy called Robert Cialdini called Influence. And it's about the psychology of persuasion. He talks about a number of key important influencing techniques that are powerful in being able to motivate people to do, let's say, club leadership roles, district leadership roles. And he cites an example of the Watergate Hotel. The scandal of Watergate that involved Richard Nixon and his re-election committee, the Republican National Committee. And really simply, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but Richard Nixon was up for re-election. And so he's the RNC, the Republican National Committee, put together a subcommittee on re-electing him in. And they got a number of different proposals. And the proposal that came out was $1 million. Again, this is back in the 60s. And the proposal was to do a number of crazy things. So they had like a plane that had a spy plane, they had bribery, they had breaking and entering, mugging, all in this $1 million. So you can imagine the committee is like, there's no way we're going to put this in place. There's no way we're going to prove this. This is illegal. Go back, redo what you're going to do, and then come back with a revised plan. So this subcommittee went away, they rejigged everything, and they came back with a plan that was a quarter of the price. So it went from $1 million down to $250,000 in terms of spend. It took away the spy plane, took away the yacht and the bribery. What it still had in there was breaking into the Watergate Hotel, which is where the Democratic National Committee's office was, to steal all of their files and get intelligence into their strategy. Now, you think to yourself, that's still really crazy, but it's actually a really quite interesting technique that Robert Cialdini talks about. And it's 2 techniques in principle. It's called the rejection or the retreat rejection. So what you do is you come up with an idea or a proposal, it gets rejected, and then you retreat back to another proposal that's less. So that's the first technique. And the second technique is called reciprocity. So when someone says no to you the first time, they're more likely to say yes to you the second time. So if you pull this all together, they went in with $1 million with all these crazy ideas, they got rejected. So they retreated back to the $250,000 with that one idea, which is breaking and entering in into the Watergate Hotel. And then the reciprocity was that because they said no last time, they felt more inclined to say yes the second time. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, the Watergate scandal happened because of these two techniques. So what does this mean for us in the world of Toastmasters and in the world in general? Well, when you're asking people to do things, maybe ask for a little bit more. And if they say no, retreat to something maybe a bit less, and they're more willing to say yes because of the reciprocity and because of their retreating. Because you're retreating, excuse me, and because of the first rejection. There's other techniques that I've seen before. Another one, if you want someone to be a club leader, you put a list of paper, and you write down all the roles, and you say, cross out the roles that you don't want to do. So then you're kind of forcing people to say, well, if there's one role, I can cross out all 6 and leave the 7th one in there, which might be the club secretary, maybe the treasurer.
What happens if they just put a line through the lot?
Well, that's true as well. But I think, again, in influencing, people won't be inclined to typically do that. You might have some people that will do that, but not all people, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's an interesting story about a really great book. It's one of my favorite top five books. And then I'm always a big one for reading. There's another large amount of books around this topic that we've talked about tonight. And I'd highly recommend you to try them all out. I did refer to Peter Drucker. I've got a couple of Peter Druckers in there. Satya Nadella's is really interesting how he's had to really influence and motivate his team to think differently and discover who they really are at Microsoft. And in fact, for those that are in the technology industry, Microsoft has regained the #1 valued company in the world. They're like 2-point-something billion US dollars. It's absolutely crazy. Kind of glad I've got shares in that company. But that's another story. Keith Ferrazzi, he is a Golden Gavel Award winner. I think of it 2 or 3 years ago. He wrote this book, Never Eat Alone, really great around networking. And then I'm also a big fan of Manager Tools. It's the 5 book on the right. It was founded by Mark Horstman and another guy, Mike Ozan. And that's a really great book about management. But that is the presentation. So what we'll do, I think we'll pause here for you, John, just to hit the stop record.
Yes, thank you, Brad. Thank you, everybody. And we will stop recording for YouTube.